What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's my team selection for game week 5 and my bench boost is active. So I'm going to talk you through how the team is looking, thoughts on captaincy and future transfers as well. And I'll quickly take you through my wildcard from game week 4 and how that went as well. So let's get into it. So let's start with game week 4. I played my wildcard and scored 78 points. So a pretty good week for me and a big green arrow. I went from about 4.3 million to just inside the top 2.5 million. So I'm still a way back from where I want to be. But it's nice to get a big score when you play a chip like that. And I think if I worked it out correctly, had I not played the wildcard, I would have done Sarr to Semenyo as the most likely transfer. And I would have scored 64 points. So it still would have been an okay week, but I have increased my total points for game week 4 by 14 points by playing the wildcard, and my team is better set up for game week 5 and the bench boost and stuff like that as well. So I would say things have gone pretty well. I would have liked it to have been a bigger increase in points, of course, but I think this was a game week where a lot of people got clean sheets. And so overall, the totals were quite high. If you look at the average score, I think it was over 60. Like the Spurs-West Ham game, for example, Paquetá didn't really have a huge amount of chances, but he was in my team on wildcard. Had he scored that effort in the first half and wiped the Spurs clean sheet, then it would have been an even bigger increase of points, right? Because Paquetá would have had his goal, and on my old team I had Pedro Porro. He would have lost the clean sheet. So it's always fine margins with stuff like this. One thing I can say is I don't regret yet, and that might come in a few weeks, playing the wildcard. Because you could look at it and say, okay, you've scored 14 additional points, but now you don't have your wildcard to play later on, and it might be worth more points later. That is absolutely correct. It could be. But I think I'm in an okay place. I know that game week 6 people are going to go for Haaland, maybe Palmer as well. If not, Palmer's coming in by game week 9. Then by 12, 13, people are going to want Salah, Haaland. I've got a setup where I can get to those players as needed. It is going to take quite a few transfers. And as soon as I get injuries and suspensions, I could be in a tough spot. But after this week, as we'll talk about in a minute, I'm hoping to play my bench boost. So that's out the way. And then I think I'm just in a pretty good spot going forward. Like, I feel much better about my team now I've played the wildcard. I feel like I've got mental clarity around what moves I need to make in the future and stuff like that. I can't go for these punts here or there because I haven't got a wildcard to bail me out. So I'm a bit more kind of laser focused on what I need to do. So I feel pretty good about it. 14 points up, better bench boost in 5 as well. I think that's pretty good. So yeah, happy with it. Basically, the additional points came from Raya in goal instead of Sanchez, Van Dijk in my defence instead of Agbadou. Like, I did go for Lacroix on wildcard, but Porro got a clean sheet and I would have had him in my old team. Joachim Andersen, I actually got quite lucky with because I almost went for Munoz instead of Goodmanson and a cheaper attack, and I would have benched Anderson. But basically, I kept thinking about it and say, I don't need to bench Anderson this week, which is why I took Munoz out. That also let me get Semenyo and Evan Nielsen, and between them, they got 18 points, which was quite nice. But I would have had Semenyo anyway. And then Yorkeresh 6 points over Watkins. And Evan Nielsen essentially is points over Wirtz. So Wirtz blanked, Evan Nielsen got the assist. Because had I not wildcarded, I would have played 3-5-2 with Strand Larsen on the bench. And for what it's worth, right, we can talk about these minor things all day long. If in game week 5, Strand Larsen is fit and ready to play and starts that Wolves game against Leeds, then it probably was better not to wildcard, because then I could have bench boosted with him. The problem was, if I'd done the Sarr to Semenyo move and then Strand Larsen was injured, there's no real good routes to go to him for someone cheaper in the forward spots, because I wouldn't have had any money left in the bank. So then I would have been stuck for my bench boost in 5, probably still in a position where I want a wildcard, but now I've got to figure out when I'm going to bench boost later. So for my team, it made sense. I know that a lot of people looked at my team and said I didn't need to do it, and they might end up being right. But I think it went okay. I got a full house of clean sheets. Raya, Lacroix, Anderson, Van Dijk. Semenyo obviously 13 points. Salah captain, Evan Nielsen and the Yorkeresh goal as well. Mateta blanked. It is what it is, right? It's Sunderland at home. I'm always going to take a risk like that. Not even a risk, right? But I'm always going to go for a player like that in a fixture like that. Paquetá is not an inspiring pick, I'll admit. He's on penalties. He will get the odd attack and return. He'll get the odd defensive contribution. And longer term, the fixtures are pretty good. And actually, from game week 6 onwards, I think in 6 and 7, I'm not even necessarily planning to play him. So a lot of the times he'll be on the bench. I can play Dewsbury Hall instead. So yeah, it went well. I could have played the wildcard and done really badly. These things happen, right? There might be people that wildcard in 6 with Haaland and Palmer that absolutely smash me because I can get to Haaland in 6, but I can't get to Palmer as well without hits. So you know, the later wildcards could work out really nicely. But as it stands, it's gone well. I'm in a pretty good spot. Let's talk about Game Week 5. So going into this week, I've got 1 free transfer and 0.7 million in the bank, which reminds me actually, when I was talking about my wildcard, I didn't mention João Pedro, because at the time I used the chip, I could have afforded to do Evan Nielsen to João Pedro. Instead, I left that money in the bank just in case I needed it over the next couple of weeks. Since then, João Pedro has gone up to 7.8 million, so I can't afford that switch. There's always a minority of people out there that really want me to kind of dwell on mistakes or just admit that I've made a massive mistake or something like that. I don't agree right now that I've necessarily made a mistake by picking Evan Nielsen. Basically, I just felt that he had no European matches, and between game weeks 4 and 8, the fixtures were slightly better for Bournemouth, and neither of the two players has penalties anyway. So that's why I went for Evan Nielsen. I will say, if I get to game week 9 and I want to do Evan Nielsen to João Pedro, then it was probably a mistake not to just start with him, because I would have increased my team value and saved myself a transfer. But I'm not willing to say right now that going without João Pedro is a massive mistake. Evan Nielsen's basically 2 points behind since I wildcarded. So let's see what happens over the next few weeks. But I do have my eye on João Pedro in game week 9, but that might not be a direct switch from Evan Nielsen. So let's see what happens. Anyway, back to game week 5. My bench boost is active. I've just wildcarded. It was my intention to play it this week, so obviously I'm going to do that. As it stands, fingers crossed, no injuries. If one crops up, then I may well use a transfer to sell that player straight away just so I can use the bench boost. But it will depend who it is. Like, let's say Goodmanson for Leeds got injured. Am I going to use a transfer to go to Esteve just to play my bench boost? Not necessarily. I will say as a learning, next season, if they keep double chips, like first half and second half of the season, there's every chance I will just bench boost in game week 1 to get rid of it. I haven't been that player in recent seasons that worries about the bench boost too much. People get really frustrated with it, but maybe it's just how it's fallen this season. But it has been a pain point trying to get it played, and it was part of the reason I wildcarded in game week 4. So next season, if I can, I might just get it out of the way straight away. In terms of my picks this week, Raya in goal against Man City at home, Dubravka on the bench against Forest at home. Obviously, my bench doesn't literally matter because I'm playing the bench boost, but I like to set up in a realistic way just to see how many points I get from it. And I think realistically, if I had the Raya versus Dubravka decision this week without bench boost, I would play the Arsenal goalkeeper because their defence is just so good. And it's like a bet against Haaland as well. So Raya in goal, Dubravka on the bench. Back 3, Lacroix against West Ham away. West Ham been pretty poor from set pieces so far against Chelsea and against Spurs as well. Lacroix's got good goal threat from corners and free kicks. I'm hoping he can get me something there, and he's good for defensive contributions, which hopefully he'll pick up in an away game. Anderson against Brentford at home, again, great for defensive contributions. Not necessarily an amazing option between game week 6 and 9, but in game week 10 onwards again, the fixtures for Fulham get quite good. So he's kind of a long-term pick. And I can bench him most weeks at that 4.5 million price point. Like game week 10 is Wolves at home. Game week 11 is Everton away. 12 is Sunderland at home. There's plenty of fixtures longer term that I can use him in. And I think because of defensive contributions this year, if I have to play him in one of these tougher fixtures between 6 and 9, so be it, right? Because he can always go and get me an additional 2 points. Van Dijk, Everton at home. Looks like a really good pick this week. Did well last week as well. I do think longer term I might regret just not going for Gabriel from the off. Even though the fixtures were slightly worse between 4 and 6, long term, I know I'm going to want him. I think I basically told myself that by going Raya and Gyökeres and leaving a spot open, it allows me to go to an attacker if I want to. Realistically, I do not see me buying another Arsenal attacker, Eze, Madueke, Saka, etc. So I probably should have just gone straight for Gabriel, but I still think Van Dijk's okay for the long term. Liverpool have got that fixture swing in game week 12 onwards, so I'll probably want him back then anyway. Then Senesi against Newcastle at home. Not an amazing chance of a clean sheet, but I do really rate Bournemouth. And I think Newcastle haven't scored a whole load of goals so far. They're obviously a really good attack, but they've got Barcelona in the Champions League this week. Bournemouth have got a chance of a clean sheet, and even if they don't, he's another defensive contribution monster. And then I chose Goodmanson over Esteve. That was a pretty close call. Esteve's probably better this week at home to Forest, but I think Goodmanson long-term rotates a little bit better with my defence. So things looking pretty good. It's not the most amazing bench boost, but honestly, I don't care at this point. I just want it gone, and I think it's okay. Dubravka's got a chance at a clean sheet. Goodmanson as well, especially if Strand Larsen's not there. And Senesi, at the very least, hopefully, will get me defensive contribution points. So in midfield, I've got Salah against Everton at home, currently with a captain's armband, and I think that will stick because in my team, there's not really a better option. And you could argue that Salah's just the best pick this week anyway, in a game week where there's not really a huge amount of great captaincy choice. And it's been so funny reading and listening to the comments about Salah after the first 4 game weeks. The guy's got 2 goals, 1 assist, and he's basically been written off because those returns have come in like the last 10, 15 minutes. Despite knowing that Salah plays every minute of pretty much every game. And he's basically been written off. And what does he do in the Champions League last night? Goal and assist in the first 5 minutes. I think Salah's still pretty good at football. We don't need to completely write him off. You can absolutely have the opinion that Haaland is a better pick right now. Fair enough. But this idea that Salah is just not worth being in our teams is absolute madness. I'm more than happy to captain him this week. It was always my intention, pretty much since pre-season, I would say. Bruno Fernandes, not great so far, let's be honest. Chelsea at home this week, Brentford away in 6, Sunderland at home in 7. So after Chelsea, the fixtures get a little bit better, at least for 2 weeks. Basically, he's not going anywhere this week. He's not worth a transfer. I've literally just kept him on wildcard. My longer term thinking is that might be the spot that goes to Cole Palmer. Now, I've got different routes to Cole Palmer, as I'll talk about later. But doing Fernandes to Palmer in game week 8 just looks quite nice for my team. It's after Fernandes plays Sunderland at home in 7, and it's when Cole Palmer plays Forest away in 8, ahead of Sunderland at home in 9, and Palmer's got Liverpool in game week 7. So Palmer in game week 6 against Brighton at home, definitely better than Fernandes away to Brentford, but in game week 7, Palmer's got Liverpool. He's good enough to get something in that game, but I'm happy to bet against it until game week 8. So that's my longer term plan with Fernandes. Semenyo's great. Newcastle at home this week. He's done so well this season so far. Great goal threat. He could even be on penalties just full time now. Who knows? Maybe Kluivert comes back in the team and Semenyo keeps them. Maybe Kluivert just doesn't come back in the team at all. So Semenyo just looks like a great pick. And then Paquetá against Palace at home. Look, as I said already, he's not much of an inspiring pick, but I know he's always going to play. The minutes are great for him. I'm not worried they got subbed early in the last game. That was probably just because the game was dead. Like Spurs were going to win it. They were down to 10 men, West Ham, and he'd been on international duty. So he's still a good option moving forward. And then Dewsbury Hall on the bench. Bench boosting with an attacker against Liverpool away, especially an attacker like Dewsbury Hall, not great, but I just wanted him long term. I did look at the same price at Stack from Leeds, who's got Wolves away this week. I just preferred Dewsbury Hall after the bench boost. And like as important as the bench boost is, I wanted the pick that I was happier with long term. So like I said already, that bench boost is not amazing, but I'm much happy with the team once we get past game week 5 into game week 6 and beyond. And Dewsbury Hall, I think, is just good. Right? Like he's playing constant 90s as a number 10. I know it's for Everton, but I think their attack's going to be better this year. So I'm really happy with that pick. Yeah, I think it looks good. Ish. And then up front, it's Evan Nielsen against Newcastle at home, Jean-Philippe Mateta against West Ham away, and Gyökeres against Man City at home. With Evan Nielsen, I've already spoken about my decision to go for him over João Pedro. We'll see how it works out over the next few weeks. I'm not too panicked just yet, but I know in game week 9, the Chelsea fixtures do get really good. So it might be a problem then, but actually, almost long-term fixtures are just pretty decent themselves. So Newcastle at home this week, then Leeds away in 6, Fulham at home in 7, Palace away in 8, and Forest at home in 9. I actually think for the next 5 game weeks, that's probably slightly better than what Chelsea have. And I rate Evan Nielsen as an option. I don't think he's necessarily the best finisher. If you look at his goals scored versus his expected goals for last season, for example, it was 12.4 XG and only 10 goals scored. So not necessarily the best finisher, but he does get a lot of chances, and his minutes are pretty much secure in that number 9 spot. But even if I got stuck with him, okay, Man City away in 10's not great. Then it's Villa away, West Ham at home, Sunderland away, Everton at home. I just think Bournemouth's fixtures look really good for quite a while. And that's part of the reason that I got 3 of them. I've got Senesi, Evan Nielsen, and Semenyo all in place already. So Evan Nielsen I'm kind of happy with, but let's see how the swing goes versus João Pedro over the next few weeks. Jean-Philippe Mateta, Glasner did say after their midweek game against Millwall that maybe he needs a break, which obviously put a little bit of concern on him as a pick. But after West Ham, they haven't got a game until the following weekend against Liverpool. I'd find it very, very, very surprising if he doesn't start against West Ham. And also, they don't really have any other options right now to play number 9. Even when Nketiah is back, he's not going to come in and play 60, 70, 80 minutes straight away. He's probably going to be on the bench. So Mateta, long term, maybe he'll need a rest at some point. But this week, it's not a problem. And then Yorkresh obviously in on wildcard, so not going anywhere. The fixtures are really good for Arsenal from game week 7 onwards. I've got slight concerns about his minutes, like early sub in the Champions League, early sub against Forest. But I'm just hoping that it was because of international duty. And then the Forest game was pretty comfortable. And then a midweek game, big game against Man City of the weekend. I'm hoping he was just kind of rested for that. But we know Arteta is happy to play Trossard at number 9 or Marino as well. So I'm not fully confident in the Yorkresh pick. And I don't know if I was wildcarding in 6 or 7, if I would definitely have him. But I still think he looks like a pretty good pick moving forward. And actually, I think he's looked quite good in the last couple of games. It's funny because in some ways, I wasn't that happy with him as a pick on wildcard 4. But having watched him in the last 2 games, I'm a bit more bullish on the pick in terms of how good of a player he's going to be in that Arsenal team and how many chances they're going to create for him. But on the flip side, I'm now a little bit more worried about the minutes. So I think he could do better if he plays enough. It's just whether he'll play enough for 9 million. But again, he's in for now. I've wildcarded, so I can't keep bailing myself out on players like this. I just hold him. And I probably hold him for game weeks 9, 10, and 11, and then I look to get rid of him because that's when Arsenal's fixtures dip a little bit. They're not terrible from 12 onwards, but they're not as good as they are before. So I basically keep him in the team until he gets benched. Then I panic. Then I tell myself he's going to start the next game, and then we just go from there. So I think the team looks pretty good. That's me for game week 5. My aim is to roll to 2 free transfers in game week 6, play my bench boost this week, and captain Salah. Let me quickly talk through some future plans as well. So quick warning, this part of the video will probably turn into a bit of a ramble and basically me listing off a bunch of fixtures for all my players over the next few game weeks just to show how I'm set up. So this is the team in the My Team tool on Hub for game week 5. So I'm going to skip that because I've just spoken about it and go to game week 6 instead. And by the way, if you want to check out this tool and all the other tools Hub have got, as always, link in the description below or scan that QR code on screen, 50% off at the moment. So game week 6, this is where on wildcard, I kind of slightly inadvertently set up a team that was quite good. My intention when I wildcarded initially on Friday night was to free hit in game week 6, but because on the deadline stream, I basically couldn't look past Semenyo and Evan Nielsen, I've basically set up a pretty good week for game week 6. And I knew that at the time, so it's not like I've completely accidentally got myself in this situation. But I was originally intending to free hit this week to get Haaland in and then to have Salah long term. But now I'm thinking about just making the switch instead and potentially saving the free hit. So in game week 6, if I just optimize the team a second, Raya against Newcastle away, it's not great, but I'm never that worried about having to play a Arsenal defender or defensive player. Van Dijk against Palace away, Senesi against Leeds away. Lacroix against Liverpool at home is not great, but he will probably get defensive contributions, and I don't see Liverpool smashing Palace. They probably will score 1 or 2 goals, but I don't see it being like a 3, 4, 5 goal game. Like Palace are just a good side. And if I sell Salah this week, it's like an extra bet against him playing Lacroix. So I don't completely hate that. And also my defence rotates quite nicely over most game weeks coming up. So I don't want to make a transfer unless I absolutely have to. The attack is Salah against Palace away, Semenyo Leeds away, Fernandes Brentford away, Dewsbury Hall against West Ham at home with Paquetá on the bench, and then Evan Nielsen Leeds away, Mateta Liverpool at home, Yorkresh Newcastle away. Now I could free hit, and I probably would make like 8 to 9 changes, but I don't feel like most of those changes are massive upgrades, apart from to get Haaland. But I could just make the double switch instead, because I'll have 2 free transfers this week, so I can do Salah out for probably Reinders. I got to be honest, I would love to see Reinders just get benched in the Champions League or against Arsenal, just so I can stop thinking about him. The problem is I don't think that's going to happen. He keeps playing 90 minutes, so he is just a really good value pick, and it's Burnley at home. And then I get rid of Mateta as well, with Liverpool at home, and just get Haaland instead. That's 2 free transfers. It leaves me 2.8 million in the bank. And I think for game week 6, without having to use a chip like the free hit, that looks pretty good. Also, there is maybe reason to save the free hit for later on. There is potential we could have a blank and double before, in the first half of the season. We're not going to know more on that until next week. And when the fixture guru pros like James, Planet FPL, Ben Crellin, etc. have talked a bit more about it, I'll discuss it next week. But that is a potential reason to save it. And also, if I get really stuck later on, where I've only got one of Salah or Haaland, having that free hit to get one of them in for their good fixtures later on could also work. Because let's say I do the Haaland switch in 6 and I get really stuck with him. not necessarily a problem because after Liverpool at home in 11 and Newcastle away in 12, the fixtures for him are really good. Leeds at home in 13, Sunderland at home in 15. But as we know, the fixtures for Liverpool are also pretty good around that time. But over the same period, 13 to 15, Salah's got West Ham away, Sunderland at home, Leeds away. Now, ideally, I would want him. But let's say I've got so many issues with injury suspensions that I can't get Salah. I've got my free hit, so I can at least get him for the Game Week 14 fixture against Sunderland at home if I really needed to. So because of how I've set my team up for Game Week 6 and because of potential issues down the line, I think it now probably makes more sense for me to not free hit. But I don't think I can not get Haaland because I really want him for captaincy against Burnley. Also, if I just scroll through to Game Week 7, I probably want to captain him against Brentford away as well. Because Salah that week's got Chelsea away, so Haaland is a better option. And honestly, Fernandes has got Sunderland at home in Game Week 7, and I did captain Fernandes against Burnley at home, Game Week 3. I'm not sure I'm going to be as confident to do it again. And so captaining Haaland that week's quite nice. And again, Paquetá on the bench. I played Dewsbury Hall against Crystal Palace. My defence is Raya against West Ham at home, Van Dijk against Chelsea away, Senesi against Fulham at home, Lacroix against Everton away. So, okay, Dewsbury Hall's against Lacroix. It's not great, but it's not the worst thing ever to happen either. So, I don't know. I could do Van Dijk to Gabriel that week. I also have 2.8 million in the bank, so I could do Goodmanson to Gabriel and bench one of these defenders. But I just think once I get past kind of Game Week 6, 7, etc., the defence looks quite good longer term. So I'm not as much as I would love double Arsenal defence, I think it's just so much value. I don't know if I will definitely do it. And also, if I spend some of this 2.8 million, like let's say I do Goodmanson to Gabriel, that doesn't give me such an easy route to get Palmer back. So that's all on my mind. Game Week 8, if I just quickly optimise it again, I definitely wouldn't play Anderson against Arsenal. I'd play Goodmanson against Burnley, Raya against Fulham, Van Dijk against Man United at home, Lacroix, Bournemouth at home. And look, I think you could argue in Game Week 8, Salah's the best captain against Man United at home. But if I had to captain Haaland against Everton, it's not the end of the world. And like I said, I'd have the money that week to do Fernandes to Palmer. And then that would leave me 1.4 million in the bank. So I've still got money to go elsewhere later on. I think the team just holds up quite nicely. I am wondering about whether to get Gabriel in, to be honest. But I think it looks okay. And then Game Week 9, obviously, same thing. Palmer's in place for Sunderland at home. He will be captaincy. And the rest of the team looks pretty good. At this point, like Paquetá's got Leeds away. My defence is Van Dijk, Brentford away, Senesi, Forest at home, Goodmanson, West Ham at home. So it looks pretty good. By the way, the other thing that's crossed my mind is if I go back to Game Week 8 and keep Fernandes, surprise, surprise, let me just make that transfer. In Game Week 9, another option could be to do Haaland to João Pedro for Sunderland at home and then upgrade one of my midfielders. Probably not Paquetá because he's got Leeds away, although I would have to bench someone. Let's just say Dewsbury Hall gets sold for Palmer. So I could just go for a few weeks without Haaland or Salah. And then that team for Game Week 9 looks pretty nice. Like Fernandes against Brighton at home is fine. Palmer, Sunderland at home. João Pedro, Sunderland at home. The reality is I will probably do Fernandes to Palmer in one move rather than selling Haaland in two. But the option is there. So basically, my move this week is definitely to roll. And then in Game Week 6, I don't see me not doing this Reinders Haaland move. And then everything else I figure out later. Do I get Gabriel? Do I sell Fernandes to get Palmer, or do I wait until 9 and sell Haaland? When do I get Salah back? When do I use my free hit? That's all decisions that I want to put off until later on. Because I think for this week, it's just easy. In Game Week 6, I've got to make that switch. I just don't think there's enough upgrades if I use the free hit. I think it could be more valuable later on. And my defense is not perfect over the next few weeks, but it's okay. Anyway, I'm rolling. What a long way to say I'm rolling. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that, make sure to give it a like. Hit that subscribe button. And I will be back tomorrow for final thoughts. And obviously check out Fantasy Football Hub if you haven't already. Links in the description below. See you tomorrow.